Call this HB 581 hearing meeting number 2 to order. Mr. Adams, purpose of the hearing.
Good evening, board members of Dr. Branch. Before we get started, there is a sign-in sheet, and we do have some handouts available at check-in. I want to remind everybody the purpose of the hearing is to provide information on HB 581 to the board and the community, and to listen to any thoughts from Oconee County residents. What opting out means: local control, customized for our community. What opting in means: state control, one size fits all. The law requires the intent to opt out be advertised in a newspaper of general circulation and show evidence of public hearings. The board is required to hold 3 hearings for the purpose of listening to the public on any thoughts they may have on this matter. The first hearing was held on January 23rd at 6 p.m. The second hearing is tonight, January 28th at 6 p.m. And the third hearing will be February 3rd at 4 p.m. HB 581 is a floating homestead exemption that limits the annual increase in property tax assessments to the federal inflationary rate from the prior year. The state will set that amount that homestead properties can increase at a yet-to-be-determined inflationary rate. Tenets of the law: school districts have one opportunity to opt out of legislation. If they do not opt out, the cap will begin in 2025 based on 2024 values. If they do opt out, they must follow an intent to opt out process. OCS projected that local revenue it would have collected could have decreased by $13.9 million over the last 7 years. As you can see in this chart, we assume the CPI, and if we use that for the inflationary rate, the last 3-year average is $2.7 million, or an $8.1 million decrease in our funding. The changes in HB 581 could significantly impact tax revenues for Oconee County schools. The change could impact flexibility to meet local needs and maintain competitive salary and benefits. As a reminder, we are funded 54% state and 46% local funds. Property taxes that make up that 46% fund part of our district salaries, as well as transportation, school supplies, and curriculum. HB 581 will limit the taxable values for homestead properties, thereby reducing the amount Oconee County schools receive, as shown in the previous chart. With the inflationary rate capped by HB 581, OCS may have to increase the millage rate to maintain the level of service we offer to Oconee County students. The millage rate is the primary means available to school districts to raise funds to ensure they can maintain educational services and resources for their students. School systems are limited in the number of mills they can levy. For fiscal year 2025, Oconee County Schools millage rate is 14.25 mills. The maximum millage rate for school districts is 20 mills. For the last 10 years, Oconee County Schools has lowered or maintained the millage rate. Oconee County Schools has gone from 17.5 mills in 2014 to the current 14.25 mills, a decrease of 3.25 mills. At the same time, Oconee County Schools has grown by 2 schools and about 1,450 students. A current mill's value is approximately $3.5 million, or the equivalent of 34 teachers. Also, this chart obviously shows we have not raised the millage rate. Oconee County Schools has only one chance to opt out, and the process must be completed by March 1st, 2025. Therefore, there's not another chance to opt out, even if the legislation causes significant issues to Oconee County Schools' funding and cash flows. This is a one-time decision with long-term financial impact. There is no sunset to this legislation, and Oconee County Schools funding gap could continue to grow. It is important to note the decision to opt out will not affect any existing homestead exemptions for Oconee County. School districts are not authorized to assess an additional penny sales tax, unlike cities and counties. And a reminder, Oconee County Schools' financial obligations are continuing to increase annually. We have read just recently with the budget that came out from the governor, there's a potential increase for health insurance for our classified personnel of about roughly $125 a month, which would equate to about $600,000 annually. We've also, with the increase in our TRS rate, we're potentially looking at another $415,000 increase. Those two together is about $1 million in an unfunded mandates from the state. Opting out allows the board to maintain local control over property tax policies and would have the ability to tailor tax rates to our specific community needs and fiscal conditions to best meet the needs of Oconee County students. The HB 581 presentation, FAQ document are posted in Assembly with corresponding meeting dates mentioned earlier. The hearing dates and times have been posted to the social district website, social media accounts, and in general circulation newspapers, and all advertisements have been published as required. That concludes the explanation of the hearing.
Peter, so you said that it won't affect any other exemptions that took effect this year, such as the senior exemption that automatically freezes your home's assessed value once you turn 65. Is that correct?
That's correct. And there's an additional one at, I believe it's over age 70.
So really, HB 581 has no effect on anybody that's 65 or older?
To the extent.
'Cause theirs is already frozen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless we raise millage
Unless,
rate.
exactly. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I just want to restate, so, and I think it's 75,
Yep.
maybe is when that additional $10,000 reduction to the assessed value kicks in for those
Yeah,
people.
We're still waiting on the tax commissioner. She's got a new brochure coming out. She hasn't got the language from the state yet. I just checked her website today, so she hasn't put it up yet.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot to work through on that.
Yes,
I
sir.
don't envy that office. Also, just want to talk through the tax values when it comes to our QBE formula.
Yes, sir.
So, and I talked about this some at our last hearing as well. Just want to make sure that again, because this is a very complex issue, and I'm glad to know that the homestead exemptions that were passed by the county residents, the House Bill 581 doesn't impact that. So those over the age of 65, when their home value is frozen, they wouldn't see an increase in taxes unless there was a millage rate increase. And looking back over the past number of years where there were millage rate decreases, even though there was a tax increase because the assessed values increased, those homeowners over the age of 65 would not see a tax increase in that scenario. So when I think about the QBE value, the way that House Bill 581 is written, the first 5 mills of every homeowner in the county goes to help fund the QBE model. And that QBE model will look at a tax roll based on the actual value of the property or of that homestead, not the inflation-managed value of that homestead over time. So that means those first 5 mills will become more valuable than any mill after those first 5 mills, meaning that a proportionate amount of dollars would be kept by the state over time to fund other districts than staying in Oconee County schools.
That's correct. They're treated as a local option. That's why it wasn't included. That's why it was excluded.
Okay. And also understand in reading the bill, and then also, for lack of a better term, attachments to it, that the state did allow local communities to review all of this to determine what's best for its community, which is why we're allowed to have these hearings and allowed to go through this process to help determine what's to help make a decision on what's best for our community.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter, I had a couple of questions, and I want to seek some clarification on a couple of things you said. You mentioned from 2018 to 2024, we could have lost about $14 million if this had been in effect. But in looking at that, is that the most fair assessment of that? Because that would be true if it was, this is a static model, meaning the inputs, if it was a static model, that would work because the inputs wouldn't change, but the factors for us are changing. For example, our tax digest continues to grow. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This would not impact commercial growth, or, we have a lot of commercial infrastructure at Epps Bridge. That would not be impacted by the homestead exemption. Is that correct?
If you opt out or opt in.
If we stayed in?
If you stay in, my understanding of the bill is that you shift the burden of responsibility will shift from homeowners to businesses.
Which would be beneficial to homeowners and taxpayers from
Right.
that perspective. And as far as resales for homes, if someone were to, if Michael bought his house for $1 million, because we know that was the case, and he sold it to me for $2 million, we're still going to realize the gain from that increase in value. Is
That's
that a
correct.
fair
It
way to look at
resets
that?
at the new value. So once
Okay.
you sell your home, the value starts at the new sales price.
And if a home were to come online, like Westland or Parkside, when those homes are built, we're not limited by that growth. Is that right? That would also go into the tax digest.
It'd be included in the tax digest.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is we're not necessarily limited as far as our tax digest growing. If we opt into the homestead exemption tax, our tax digest could continue to grow. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And as far as the local control piece of this goes, we maintain the freedom to adjust the millage rate based on budgetary needs up to 20 mils. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we keep that control locally.
Yes, sir.
So when we talk about losing local control, the biggest issue there would be,
You don't have the opportunity to add a penny sales tax. So the only option you would have if you needed to raise funds would be to increase that millage rate.
well, we can't levy a penny tax now beyond the ESLOS, right? For the
correct.
ELOS. Okay. I think that answers the questions I have for now. I appreciate that.
I want to add one thing on that. So in that scenario, if we did have to raise the millage rate, those people over the age of 65 would see a tax increase through that scenario where otherwise they would not, if we were obligated to raise millage rates across the board. So that would be, I think, an impact that would come across our taxpayers and our homeowners.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you.
Public Communications, Mr. Colquitt. Do we have anybody signed up to speak?
Mr. Ransom, we have 4 citizens signed up this evening. Before I invite them up, I'll read this. Policies BCBI and BCBIR1 state that only Oconee County residents or school system employees may address the board, and that members of the public shall conduct themselves in a respectful manner that is not disruptive to the conduct of the board's business. The board allows 3 minutes for those who sign up prior to the meeting. Please state your name, address, and topic. The board requests that you refrain from making any disparaging remarks about school system personnel. Generally, there will be no response to comments or questions posed by citizens at the meeting. All comments and questions will be taken under advisement by the board. However, any board member shall be free to respond and make public comments if he or she elects to do so. To any citizen wishing to provide documents for board members, please submit them to the Director of Communications before the meeting or prior to addressing the board. Please remain at the podium during your public comment time. Our first citizen this evening is Ian Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you all again. Since I was here last week at the last meeting, I've had a chance to look at the documentation that was provided by Peter, and I just want to comment on some of that. Adam, I appreciate your comments. I think you were spot on a bunch of them. Ryan, the QBE formula is complex, and there's no doubt about it. However, it's important to know that first 5 mils doesn't leave Oconee County. It just reduces the amount of money that the state provides and to make sure that we're equitable across all counties. So, it's not like we're giving away that 5 mils. To go back to use the documentation that you provided, I think it was page 5 and page 9 of the, I'm going to use your numbers. So yeah, the millage rate, if you go back 10 years, the first 7 years of that, the millage rate stayed essentially constant at about between 16.5 and 17 mils, which is fine. It's only in the last 3 years that that millage rate has continued to drop. What's left out conveniently out of that is during that time, the taxes have gone up significantly. If we take from 2018, your tax that you were getting from the millage rate was 23.3 million to this year 36.9 million, which is a 58% increase in taxes. So, the millage rate, to me, it's a political expediency, right? The millage rates mean nothing to me. It's the amount of money that I've got to go and ink the check with at the courthouse. It's important. And even in the last 3 years where we've seen that significant drop in the millage rate, even then the taxes have gone up from 28.6 million to 36.9 million. So, it's one thing saying that, we can put out the press release, it's the lowest millage rate this century, whoop-de-doo, but it's also the highest amount of tax that we've ever taken from the citizens of this county at the same time. I'm going to go to a minute left here, but just going back to your question and answer thing, Adam, you spoke to this a bunch, the unpredictable revenue loss, you don't know what your tax digest is going to be 1 year to the next anyway, so it is somewhat unpredictable. There's the concept that you don't receive any local fair share, well, that's because we're more affluent than most counties, so we never have received a local fair share. This bill doesn't change any of that. Reducing the revenue by 2.7 million on average over the last 2 years, that's less than 2% of your budget, assuming that you don't change your millage rate. To go back to this is a very, fluid, needs to be a fluid model. So, you're saying a 2% decrease is going to cause doom and destruction in the school system. I don't buy it. Opting out ensures that the district can better manage long-term financial health. No, it just simply states that you can't raise the property tax values more than the rate of inflation. I'm out of time here. I guess we'll speak next time. But yeah, you got plenty of local control. Okay, there's no local control that you're losing. You might be docking your allowance a little. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
The next citizen is Charles Hunt.
Welcome, Mr. Charles.
I go by Chuck Hunt. I'm from 1080 Sam Cooper Road, and I've been in the county since 1991. I came here, and the job that I sought was a teaching position. So I got certified as a Georgia science teacher and math teacher with gifted ed specialization. And I've taught in classrooms from 4th grade to 12th grade over a period of 12 years. Then I had to homeschool my own daughter because of learning difficulties that I couldn't find a solution for. I returned to the classroom, didn't have the energy to continue to help with K-12 programs, so I subbed for a while in our Oconee County schools, and later on I decided to be a bus driver and did that for 11 years. I'm asking you to opt out. Do not opt out. Excuse me. A lot of confusion about the homestead exemptions. I understand, because they were all on the ballot this year, and it gets confusing. But this is about owner-occupied homes, not commercial property, not all the other things we've added to the digest. While we've seen the audience of gray hairs complaining about it, it is owner-occupied homes with your students in them that will be affected by this stabilization of the tax intake. And it's you guys trying to say that you know how to spend those few dollars that the homeowners will save for those kids better than their parents do, and that's a bad message. I would encourage you not to go there. You're electing to cause a possible strain on the parents as the inflation rates affect their house and cause budget issues in their own home just for the comfort of creating your budget, which is not a good message for a K-12 program. So over the last few years, we've seen quite a lot of commercial growth, and that was on purpose because we were promised we would take these businesses in, and when I got here 30 years ago, it was pretty much a homeowner's that you guys had to rely upon for your taxes. We have plenty of commercial property coming online now and more in the planning. We have 3,000 home sites that haven't had a house built on them yet, and that's not talking about Parkside and others that are on a more extended hold. I know these sort of things because I'm on the Board of Planning Commission, and I've been there since 2009, and I'm not getting in the way of commercial growth because the homeowners don't need to be the only taxpayers, and this is one opportunity that you guys have to show that the homeowners are important, whether we're 65 or older, or whether we got a young family in there and we're trying to do the best for the kids, just like you guys do on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
The next citizen is Victoria Cruz.
Ms. Cruz, welcome.
Hi, good evening, Board. Victoria Cruz, 1151 Lake Walbrook Drive, Athens, Oconee County. I pretty much agree with the comments that were made by the previous citizens. I did not come to the previous meeting, but Mr. Hammack came and spoke at the GOP last night, and so I had an opportunity to hear what was going on. I have to admit, this House bill was, the thing on the ballot was very confusing. A lot of people didn't understand it. I looked at it. I personally did not vote for this because I am over 65 and I will benefit from the homestead exemption, or the tax space freeze. But I look at I'm pretty sure most of the citizens didn't know what they were voting for, but they did vote for you to opt out. I mean, to opt in. They did not vote for you to opt out. They probably didn't even realize that you could opt out. They wanted to see some sort of control on their home taxes, and I don't blame them. And to say here that it's not going to affect 65, we're not that selfish that we're only concerned about ourselves. We are concerned about the younger families, the families who want to move in here. They're going to have to pay more for the houses, the ones who move in here. Houses are not going to get less expensive very fast. Certainly not as fast as they got very expensive. Your tax base grew tremendously over the last few years. You benefited from the inflation we've had the last 4 years. Well, that's hopefully going to end, but it's going to end at hopefully coming from the federal level, but they're going to cut costs too. They are overspending. They have been just using up taxpayer money as fast as they can, and that's what I see happening here at the school board. Just the cost overruns you had on this building, people never imagined that this building would be as expensive, and I believe you're still furnishing it. So the costs are not stopping. The problem is you're going to opt out of saving people money, you're going to try to keep your revenues as high as possible, and you're not going to give the citizens any input on how you spend that money. You know, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen where citizens have an input on how you spend the money. So I just think this was kind of a bait and switch to the voters, and I'm sorry that more of them aren't here to speak out against it, but we do need to tighten our belts all the way around, from the federal down, and so you're unsure of what your revenue was going to be. So are a lot of people. So are a lot of people. So just take that into consideration. And I appreciate your remarks, Mr. Hammond, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz.
The next citizen is Roy Byrne.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Roy Byrne. My address is 2744 Wild Indigo Crossing, and I live in Oconee County. And I want to start tonight with a hypothetically speech. Let's say the superintendent of the school system is an elected officer. And John Doe is the present superintendent. And now we have an election coming up, and Jason Branch is running for the office along with John Doe. The election is held, and Jason Branch wins the election by receiving 64% of the vote. But the school board has the option of whether to accept the election results or to keep John Doe as superintendent. And they decided to keep John Doe. Is this the will of the people? No. I thought we lived in a democracy where 51% is the majority. The citizens of this county has spoken with a 64% majority on House Bill 581, and you should accept the will of the people. One of the citizens that was here last week and spoke was told by a county official that Oconee County was a senior retirement county. If that's so, why are we having to build more schools and employ more teachers, bus drivers, etc.? There are approximately 165 homes in our neighborhood where we live, and I can count on one hand the seniors in our neighborhood. There are from 1 to 6 kids in every home, excluding the senior retirees. Now, to speak on behalf of seniors, I think it's time for seniors to be exempt from school taxes. I have been paying school taxes for 57 years. My wife and I, we don't even have a kid in school. We don't have a grandkid in school or great-grandkids in any school system. I have checked on counties where seniors are exempt from these taxes, and we have many in the state. Close to us are Gwinnett, Fulton, Hall, Forsyth, Henry, and right next door to us is Walton County. They don't pay any school taxes. They're exempt completely. And they start at 65 years old, and even some are at 70 years old when they are not required to pay taxes. Most of we seniors are on fixed income. We get a little 2.59% increase in cost of living for our Social Security. That does not come close to the expenses that we have, like Medicare, insurance, deductibles, increases in supplemental insurance, or drug cost increases, let alone the cost of groceries and et cetera. Am I through? Can I continue? A few more seconds.
Go ahead.
You know, I haven't seen in any form of government where there's not waste, and maybe I'll get into that at the next meeting. I recommend you, as the board and superintendent, maybe you need to tighten the purse strings and follow the voters' wishes. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next week and speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Mr. Colquitt, do we have any more speakers?
That concludes public communication.
Before we end public communication, I just want to say something to the speakers. Thank you for coming here, for your thoughtful comments, and for really sharing your feedback. I know this is a very complex issue, and there's a lot of passion around it, so thank you for that. And a big thank you to Peter as well for breaking down a complex issue for us so that we can make a decision about this. Because at the end of the day, as a board member, we have to make a decision that is best for students in the schools and best for everybody associated with our school community. And to me, a big part of that is a financial well-being of a household. I think that's a big part of this. And the cornerstone of my decision when it comes to voting for this will be the vote. As you all said, we can't deny the fact that 64% of the public voted to be in this homestead exemption tax, and I think that's something that I'm going to keep in mind as we treat this hearing process with an open mind. So thank you all for being here.
Any other comments? We have no further business. We're adjourned.